All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to explore something with a fascinating, truly massive scope: how we are working to safeguard life across three completely distinct scales over the next decade. We hear a lot about 2030, right? It's always talked about as this major milestone year for humanity. But we rarely look at how entirely different fields of science are racing toward it at the exact same time. So today we're going to examine a unified framework of survival, starting all the way down in the microscopic world inside our cells and zooming all the way out to the massive ecosystems that cover our planet.
So, what do artificial intelligence, your daily walk, and planetary conservation actually have in common? Well, while they might seem completely unrelated at first glance, they're actually locked in a unified countdown to the year 2030. Think about it. Whether it's a biochemist simulating molecules, a doctor prescribing exercise, or a policymaker trying to protect an ocean reef, they are all utilizing these crucial frameworks designed to safeguard our future. Ultimately, they're all trying to answer the exact same question: how do we sustain life?
Okay, here's our roadmap. Number 1, the microscale, focusing on AI protein design. Number 2, the mesoscale, looking at human physical activity. And number 3, the macroscale, diving into global biodiversity targets.
Section 1. Micro AI Protein Design.
Look at the sheer velocity of innovation on this timeline. It's just wild. Machine learning is completely revolutionizing our understanding of cellular machinery, and it's happening so fast. In late 2024, AlphaFold 3 broke the mold. It wasn't just predicting single proteins anymore, it was predicting entire multi-molecule complexes, like proteins interacting with DNA and RNA. Then, fast forward a few months to April 2025, and a tool called RF Diffusion 2 lets scientists build custom functional enzymes totally from scratch in a matter of weeks. And by June 2025, we get Boltz 2. It can predict a protein's structure and its binding affinity, basically how strongly a drug will attach to it, in about 20 seconds on a single GPU. What used to take hours and hundreds of dollars to calculate now takes mere pennies and seconds.
So, generative protein design. What this really means is that we are no longer just passively observing nature. Generative AI tools are allowing scientists to actively engineer new biology. We're talking about designing custom therapeutics, synthetic binding proteins, and industrial enzymes that literally never existed in billions of years of evolution. Biotech companies are already using this to cut their preclinical drug discovery timelines from like 42 months down to 18. We are redesigning the microscopic foundations of life to fight disease better and faster.
But it's incredible to think about optimizing the internal machinery of our cells, but what about the machinery of our actual bodies? Just as AI is revolutionizing structural biology, the World Health Organization is urgently trying to optimize how we move in the real world to prevent systemic physical decline. Which brings us to Section 2, Meso, Human Physical Activity. We're looking at the WHO's 2020 guidelines here, which essentially provide a deeply researched, data-driven blueprint for surviving and thriving. Let's break down the actual targets. For kids and teens aged 5 to 17, the goal is at least 60 minutes a day of moderate to vigorous activity. For adults 18 to 64, it's 150 to 300 minutes a week of moderate aerobic activity. And for older adults 65 and up, it's that same 150 to 300 minutes, but with a crucial addition: they need multi-component physical activity that emphasizes balance and muscle strength training. But what's absolutely brilliant about these guidelines is how inclusive they are. For the very first time, they explicitly outline that pregnant and postpartum women should also aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity a week to decrease the risk of complications. Furthermore, adults living with chronic conditions, like hypertension, type 2 diabetes, or HIV, as well as those with disabilities, are urged to meet these exact same adult guidelines wherever possible. And the science backing this all up is fascinating. It relies on a dose-response curve, which shows this consistent curvilinear relationship between physical activity and health outcomes. What that means in plain English is that there is literally zero lower threshold for benefit. The steepest drop in your health risks happens at the very beginning of the curve. Moving from doing absolutely nothing to doing just a little bit of activity gives you massive, disproportionate health dividends.
And this perfectly illustrates the WHO's dual approach to our health. Look, it's actually not enough to just hit your 150 exercise minutes at the gym and call it a day. The guidelines highlight a critical distinction. You have to actively replace sedentary sitting time with movement of any intensity. Even if you work out, prolonged sitting introduces its own very high risks for things like cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes.
Just look at this graphic from the WHO documentation for older adults. You can see those vibrant, colorful little icons representing the different types of movement, from aerobic to balance training. The directive is super clear here: Replace sedentary time with physical activity of any intensity. The data reveals a stark reality. Prolonged sitting pushes you right into a high-risk category for all-cause mortality, regardless of your age. But simply swapping out sitting on the couch for light activities like taking a slow walk, doing the dishes, or doing some gentle stretching drastically shifts you back toward the low-risk zone. Every single minute of movement counts as medicine.
Okay, so we can optimize our bodies, right? But what about the life support system we all share? We can design perfect proteins, and we can get our 10,000 steps in, but none of that matters if the environment we live in collapses.
Section 3. Macro Global Biodiversity Targets.
$500 billion. That is a staggering number with a whole lot of zeros. At the macro level, the Convention on Biological Diversity has outlined urgent global targets to halt the destruction of our ecosystems by 2030. And this $500 billion figure, that is the massive annual target they've established to reduce or phase out incentives and subsidies that actively harm biodiversity. It's a gigantic financial pivot aimed at stopping the funding of our own ecological destruction and instead scaling up positive incentives for conservation.
And here is how they actually plan to physically protect the planet. These are the famous 30 by 30 targets. Target 2 aims to restore 30% of all degraded ecosystems globally. Target 3 aims to effectively conserve at least 30% of all land, inland waters, and oceans. Alongside all that, they're aiming to halt human-induced species extinction, protect genetic diversity, and cut the introduction of known invasive alien species right in half. These aren't just vague, feel-good hopes. They are measurable, aggressive milestones designed to restore the life support systems that our entire civilization relies on.
I love this quote from Target 16, "In order for all people to live well in harmony with Mother Earth." It really perfectly captures the heart of today's explainer. Think about it. Whether a computer is generating brand new protein structures to fight cancer, or a doctor is reminding you to swap 20 minutes of screen time for a brisk walk, or global leaders are signing treaties to restore a dying ocean reef, the ultimate unified goal across all these scales is exactly this: achieving a balanced harmony with the life around us.
So, as we march toward this critical 2030 milestone, we're armed with better AI, clearer biological guidelines, and concrete global targets. The tools to safeguard life are literally in our hands. But as we rewrite the rules of survival from our microscopic cells to our massive oceans, the ultimate question remains: how will you use this critical decade to move, build, and conserve to shape the future of life on Earth?